Hey y'all, welcome to the Coyote Trapping School podcast. I'm your host, Chris Pope, coming at you today. First off, I want to thank our sponsors, Cots Bros Lures. It is trapping season. I've been getting some messages from folks saying, hey, my season just came in. It's October 16th as this is being recorded, so middle of October. Time is here, so if you need any supplies last minute, head on over to cotsbros.com and they'll get you set up. They'll get you stuff shipped out quick, so you can be ready for the trap line. I still got a little bit of time and been trying to kind of think through what I'm going to do with my line this year. You know, with fur prices are what they are. They always are. But the one thing that I'm kind of battling with right now is, I don't know if you can see, you kind of see here, I got some furs hanging and drying, stretching. These are my furs from last season that have been in my freezer and I hadn't worked through them. So, of course, with this coming trapping season, now's the time to work through them, right? Better late than never. If it wasn't for last minute, nothing would get done. And I've got some furs. Obviously, I've been talking about that I've had shipped to the tannery. The problem is I can't ship. I don't need to ship, 40 raccoons to be tanned, as I don't yet have a market for them, an outlet for them. So, something that I'm kind of trying to work through and figure out, what am I going to do with these furs? The Grunwald, I saw, it's been a couple weeks ago now, but where they had a truck that was coming through Georgia. And they'll buy anything. One of their bread and butter things, I guess you could say, is beavers and raccoons. And the upside of the beaver is now that all it has to do is be frozen. And so I can't remember now if they want them frozen in half or frozen in quarters. I think it's maybe just frozen in half. So you just skin it, lay it in the freezer flesh to flesh, and that's it. So I was like, man, I don't have a ton of beavers, but one, beaver take up a lot of room. Two, they're a pain in the neck to flesh, and they're the most intensive, probably fur bearer that you've got so far as put up. So I was like, that might be a pretty good option. So I messaged them to see, what ballpark what they were going to be paying, and it was $5 for a beaver. And if I had 100 beaver, I might have thought about it because I don't really have a good option to, a better option to move 100 beavers. But, I don't know, I probably got 15 or so in the freezer and taking up a lot of room. But for the drive and all, that didn't make sense. So, and that's kind of what I'm looking at. I guess long-winded way of saying that, in the past few seasons, I've really focused on having, trapping as much as I could during trapping season. And so, we have a 3-month long season here in Georgia. Generally, if you follow along on my trapping channel, I've tried to make, make two months out of it. Excuse me. And, have a good number of sets out and have a pretty good line daily that I'm checking. Now, it's not any kind of long line, but, 30 to 50 sets. And I like to catch stuff, right? So it's not 30 to 50 coyote sets. It might be 25 coyote sets and a dozen coon traps, and some of those other sets that are maybe a little bit higher catch rates, those coons and stuff, and just thinking about it now, I like that active trap line. My son goes with me. We like to see animals caught. But I don't know that it does make sense to whack and stack the coons when we don't really have anything to do. I don't have anything good to do with them. So anyway, just thinking about that, man. I'm still gonna get my traps out. Still gonna post videos and be catching stuff. But in the back of my mind, I'm just trying to figure out what am I gonna do. What am I gonna do with these furs? How can I think a little bit strategically and outside the box the way I've been trying to think and actually move some of this stuff. So I'd encourage you to do the same, because the only good thing about, and I'm not knocking Grunwald, please don't take me wrong. They gotta pay you what they, they know what they need to pay and what they need to make out of it and all. So I'm not knocking them one bit. And the upside for the beaver is, like I said, that you don't have to do any put up with it. But any animal that you flesh and stretch, even $5 is not. I mean, that doesn't even begin to cover your time and effort and all. So, not like, again, not that we're doing this for the money, but you gotta keep in mind something. And I guess I say that maybe I'm saying that a little tongue in cheek. It just hurts my feelings in the past when I've sold fur that I've stretched and dried and put work into, and it sells for $2 or something like that. It just, golly, yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it. It hurts my feelings, and from that perspective, I'd rather sit on it, come up with something to do with it myself than to sell a hard-earned, good-looking, high-quality fur for $2. So anyway, we had Georgia. We had our recent. One more plug before I get too far. Short liner trapping bags. They are in stock, and more being made. I've had some issues, and I apologize to anybody that's gone. I've had a couple of orders come through, but I've had some issues with my website. Hopefully, by the time this video or this episode is posted, I'll have that worked out. Man, it sucks being online and not being tech savvy, but it's something to do with the speed of my server or something like that. Anyway, I'm trying to get it worked through. Bear with me, and I appreciate all y'all's support and following on and bearing with me through that. So, Georgia, we had our state convention a couple weeks ago. One of the things that's interesting to me is the Furbearer report, and I meant to put together something. That's why I got my computer out and I got sidetracked. But anyway, depending on how new you are to trapping, you may or may not know, but generally all states have a Furbearer Biologist, and just like the deer biologist and things, because whether folks realize it or not, some of these states, even Georgia's trapping program, I mean, you're talking about a not insignificant number of animals that get harvested through the trapping season. And then you've got hunting on top of that, and that is more popular in some states than others. And so it makes sense to have somebody that's, if we're managing populations, it makes sense to have somebody paying attention to that. And what a lot of people may not know is that most of the states that I'm familiar with have a trapper survey. So after the end of every season, either trappers or in some cases fur dealers are sent a survey, or either have to record the number of animals that are harvested, the species, and then that gets in turn turned in. And so that's just really neat to me to see those numbers and see that data and information, and it really helps. I don't want to say legitimize, but maybe a little bit of trapping. And I think once you start kind of looking around the numbers, and that's kind of what I did, was pull together several different states, and I didn't hit all of them by any means, because I know there's a lot, and I was just trying to hit a few, because some of this data is more easy to find than others. And Georgia is not, I didn't find it on the website. It may be on the website in some kind of PDF, but I've got the sheet that the Furbearer Biologist handed out, and so I was just going to kind of talk through some of that, and then look at some of these other states, because it's really interesting data, and it's pretty impressive to see some of the scale and some of the impact, and you think about, if trapping's taken away, what does that look like? So we'll get to that in a minute, but so just looking through some of the specifically for Georgia, the trends. So the total trapping license sales for 2019-2020. Now some of this different data varies because of the publication date. So this is for 2019-2020, so this most recent trapping season. But some of these are for 2017, and I think most of them are at least, maybe probably for 2018 and 2019. This Pennsylvania data that I've got is from 2017, so 2018, 2017. But then I've got some 2018, 2019. So all this data is within a couple years old. Georgia, this is being the most up to date, but total trapping license sales, 1,560. That's up 4% from 2018, 2019. Active trappers, this is kind of weird, but 333 active trappers out of that 1,560. I don't know the thing about Georgia trapping license is it's not it's considered a commercial license, and so it's not something that you can go on the website or go on your app and buy like a hunting license. You have to send it in. You have to fill out your form. So it surprises me that there's so few active trappers relative to the number of licenses sold. Reported acres trapped. So you're asked to estimate how many acres you trap. 832,000. That's down a pretty good bit from 1819 was 1,300,000. But if you look at it on the overall state, Georgia state size, which is 38 million acres, you're talking about 2% of the state. Active acres per active trapper, right at 2,000, which is down from the year before was about 4,000. So, all this is estimated, so it's tough to have a good grasp. You got to take all this kind of a little bit with a grain of salt. Average land sets per trapper about 10. Average water sets per trapper about 3. First season trappers 95, so 23%. That's up from the previous year of 85. But that's that's pretty substantial. Now I don't know if that. I would assume if they're first season trappers, they're considered active trappers. That's a third of the active trappers. It's only less than 10% of the total licenses sold. But if all those 95 first season trappers were active trappers, that's a third of the active trappers in the state. That's pretty surprising, I guess, to me. Then you look at they've got the state split up by region. By far, the majority of the active trappers are in what's called the Piedmont region. So that's kind of not far north Georgia, but it's kind of the kind of a little bit of a mid strip, a little bit just above center for Georgia, which makes sense because that's you've got Macon, you've got Atlanta, you've got Augusta. That's some of the larger cities, and so in my opinion, kind of what you see there is you've got a higher population density, but it's close enough. People got their deer lease. That's an hour drive from home, and so they'll go out and set a few traps on the weekend, stuff like that. So that makes a lot of sense. Sometimes you might think it would be the reverse, that and it probably is that in like the southern portion of the state, it's more land trapped and more acres per trapper. But in the the most populated area of the state is where you're going to have the most trappers. I guess that kind of makes sense. Then you get into the fur-bearer harvest. And this is the portion that is interesting to me, and this is what I meant to kind of extrapolate on a little bit, because this is just the reported harvest. So of the 1,560 licensed trappers that were sent surveys, 544 were completed. So that's 35%, right about a third. So I was going to blow up these numbers to see. Let's see. Okay. I think that makes sense. So for gray fox, 702 reported harvested. That's actually, if you assume that that's roughly a third of what was harvested based on the survey respondents, that's 2,000 gray fox. Red fox only 260, which is 780. Raccoon 3952, which is just under 12,000. Bobcat 772, 2,300. Possum 31, which is just over 9,000. Beaver 2,506, which is 7,500. Now the one caveat there could potentially be that this does not factor in what Georgia considers a nuisance trapper. So if there's trappers that were strictly nuisance trappers, and there were of the survey respondents, 23% indicated they were strictly nuisance trappers. So that information was taken out. So odds are they were probably harvesting beavers too, possibly coyote, possibly predators. But because that's considered a nuisance trapping, that number was taken out. So you're getting this is more of a recreation. This is the recreational harvest of fur bearers by trappers. not necessarily the total harvest by trappers, which I think would be really interesting to know too, because I'd be interested to see, especially that beaver number, how that beaver number changes. Otter, 422, 1266. Now the bobcat and the otter, one thing that I would be interested to know about that, because if they're shipped out of state, which is, there's guys that catch their bobcats and they want to tan them, they don't have to get CITES tags. But if the hides are sold, shipped out of state, they have to be tagged, right? So we should have hard data on those numbers. So that'd be something. I may try to reach out to our biologist. Let me make a note. On those species, because I think that would be interesting to see. Coyote, let's see, otter 422, 26, and 96. So that's just over 8,000 coyotes harvested. Muskrat, for whatever reason, got left off the survey. The unfortunate thing is there's not many muskrats that are trapped in Georgia. Not a great muskrat population. Striped skunk, 137, so that's 400 skunks total. And I would guess that's another one that's probably a lot more skunks harvested or taken through the nuisance trapping program. And spotted skunks, 15. I would really like to catch a spotted skunk. 7 mink taken. That's 21 estimated statewide. 3 nutria. I'd be interested in that. I've never known that we had nutria in the state, and I think that'd be definitely something that we wanted to kind of keep a lid on. So that gives us an overall estimated, just shy of 44,000 animals harvested for recreational purposes through Georgia's 2019-2020 trapping season. So that's pretty interesting. So let's see, if you put that divided by the number of trappers, 1560 equals, so that's roughly 28 animals per trapper. So I don't know. I just, maybe I'm a little bit of a nerd, but that's interesting to me. Another thing that Georgia always does is they ask whether you think the population is increasing, decreasing, or stable. And so coyote, and they've got this kind of bar charted here. Coyote overall is increasing. Raccoon, mostly stable to increasing. Possum is mostly stable to increasing. Same for bobcat, beaver, gray fox. There was a gray fox and red fox. There was a fairly large portion of respondents that said, not a fairly large. It's red fox was probably a third of respondents said they felt like the red fox population is decreasing, and gray fox, probably more like a quarter of respondents felt like the population was decreasing. Otter, stable to increasing. Striped skunk, stable to increasing. So anyway, that, I just like looking at those numbers, but in knowing that, Georgia is not really a fantastic fur producer just because of fur prices and quality, and really just I guess the culture, maybe, it's not a strong trapping culture in the South like there is in the North, which makes sense because we're fixing to look at some data in a minute, and you're going to see the serious monetary impact that trapping brought to people in Iowa specifically. And when you see that, you can figure out why there was a lot more interest in trapping, and how that could trickle into today, that being built into the culture of us that are trappers. We know that we're not doing it for the money, and but how a lot of us in the South are grew up deer hunting, and so we don't deer hunt as much to fill the freezer as we do, because that's something that we it's part of who we are and what we do, if that makes sense. So in looking around at other states, one thing that I found was that different states have drastically different I guess, Furbearer programs in general, and attention and emphasis put on those programs, and then also how they disseminate or distribute that data. And so North Carolina was one that was pretty interesting, because all of their information, they put out a periodical, Furbearer newsletter twice a year, spring, summer, and fall, winter. And it's, let's see, this one is 16 pages. It's got some graphs and charts. It's really a neat little document. And I'll link to each of these in the description below. But it gives. So this one is spring, summer of 2020, and it shows 2018, 2019 trapping license sales by county. So you can see, some of these counties have, this one has 93, 82, 68. There's one that has only one license sale, 11, 23. That's kind of neat, especially, if you live there and you could look and see how many trappers are in your county. They've got listed trapper education opportunities, advanced education opportunities, trapper instructor awards, and education instructors, their nuisance program or their wildlife control agent program, when those classes and trainings are. They give some information on any kind of regulation changes, lifetime trapping license, how to properly fill out your trapper tags. They also have, what's this called? The Furbearer Cooperator, or Furbearer Cooperator program. And they're trying to get information from bobcats, otters, and spotted skunks. And so they're requesting that certain parts of the animal are sent in so that they can test. And I'll get into that in a minute. Got some rabies statistics. In general, it's just kind of a neat, especially for, those third potentially of active trappers that are new to trapping, first season trapping. This could provide some really interesting data. They've got a creature feature about animals, and then they have here are their survey results. Excuse me, because I might have to sneeze. Bear with. Excuse me. Luckily you're on. Listen to me in your ears and not in person, huh? So, for North Carolina, 2018-2019, number of licensed trappers was 2,800. Percent of licensed trappers that were active, 52%. So that's 1,400. That's drastic, in my opinion, a drastic difference from the third or so. So the species harvested. Now these are estimated trapper harvests based on the survey. So I think these are the numbers that I was giving of what is estimated to be the total harvest based on the percent responding, the percent not responding. And they've got it broken up into three regions: the coastal plain, the Piedmont, and the mountain region. The vast majority, not the vast majority, the majority of species are harvested in the coastal plain, second to Piedmont, and then a small amount, 10%, in the mountain region. And you're looking at overall, between the three regions, 28,000. So that's 55, probably 55 to 60,000 animals harvested. Beaver being pretty heavy at 11,000. Coyote, let's see, about 7,500. Raccoon, about 10,000. Possum, here we go. 9,500, 8,500. The one interesting thing that I've kind of in reading through about North Carolina is apparently a lot of the individual counties have restrictions on fox trapping, and I remember talking to, I think, NC Trapper a while back on Instagram about that, and I think maybe that harkens back to some of the fox and hound hunter days, and people that weren't friends of trappers, they weren't for trapping, they were for running their fox dogs and coyote dogs. They would get trapping outlawed in the county so they could run their fox dogs. I may be totally off there, but regardless, the fox numbers are probably a little bit, not necessarily skewed, but not every county is open to fox trapping, so that obviously definitely has an impact. Here they've got estimated trapper harvest and estimated pricing. Let's see, estimated trapper harvest from the 15-16 trapping survey. Okay, so this is 15-16. This is 4 years worth, and then price data. So again, this is really interesting information for new trappers. They've got some information about best management practices, but really overall, just an easy, a lot of charts and graphs showing some information, quick and easy for somebody to look at. I really like that. So if you shift gears to Iowa, now Iowa has I can't remember how long this was a. I don't know if I've still got it pulled up or not. That's Michigan. Anyway, this was, I think this had historical data and harvest data for all animals harvested in Iowa. I just selected out a portion specific to fur bearers. This was like over 100-page document, and it's very detailed. It's kind of interesting because in the fur bearer section, it goes through, so you got historic fur bearer harvest, then it breaks it down, current fur market in Iowa, talks about the fur harvesters and fur dealers. So over the past 10 years, the number of licensed fur dealers in Iowa has fluctuated from 36 to 49 and is also dependent upon fur market trends. In 2018-2019, there were 32 registered fur dealers, residents, similar to the previous year, consistent with fur market trend. Then you got fur harvest seasons, and then it goes into each individual species. So here you've got raccoon. Raccoon harvest in the 1930s was relatively low and comprised only 3% of the total harvest. By the mid-40s, raccoon harvest tripled. And so it's really neat to just see this historical data. It's neat that they've got this data going back to the 30s, of each species. And it gives kind of some price trends. So here it says the average gray fox pelt in Iowa was $10, which was similar to the 17-18 average price of $11. Trapping accounted for 64% of the total harvest of red and gray fox, which was lower than the previous season. Hunting accounted for 26% of the total harvest. And then they have some information. Some of the data is from bow hunter observation surveys. But I mean, it's every fur bear: striped skunk, weasel, river otter, bobcat. It talks about how the otter and the beaver were both extirpated from Iowa and their reintroduction efforts. And this is a part that really intrigued me. So here is a table that goes from 2018 to 1977. So they do spotlight. Iowa does spotlight surveys, and apparently the raccoons are counted in the spotlight survey. And so this outlines the number of routes, the number of mean number of raccoons observed, and then it shows the raccoon harvest and the average pelt price. And so the last two columns were interesting to me. In 1977, there were 264,367 raccoons harvested. You jump down to 2018, 115,132 raccoons harvested. And let's see, in 2013, there were 308,000 harvested. Let's see, in 1986 was the highest at 390,773 raccoons harvested. The really interesting part is looking at the fur prices, and it's a little bit disheartening, to be honest with you. So you look at 1978 was the highest price of all the years that are shown here. And I guess this is just looking back 30 years. Average pelt price was $31.18, to where in 2018 the average price was $7.90. That's not surprising to any of us, right? But when you apply that to the total harvest of 251,985 raccoons, that's $7.8 million that was generated through trapping. And that's where it makes sense that there were people that were having a large impact on their livelihood catching raccoons in the 70s and 80s, right? I mean, that's something, if you read some of the, if you've been around trapping for very long, or if you read some of the information on the fur boom days, you know, that's when it was. People were making their whole living. Obviously, I mean, $8 million off of just raccoons harvested in one state. And then now, if you look at the raccoon harvest and the price per pelt, it's $900,000. That's pretty disheartening, right? And then you look at, they've got it listed since 1930, the 30-31 season, and that's just really neat about this. So I would say in general, this Iowa information is not as easy to digest as the North Carolina information or the Georgia one-pager, but it's neat to go back and see the trend so far back. So this has, I guess, the main fur species in Iowa: mink, muskrat, raccoon, and red fox. And it has their total value for that season based on mean price and number harvested. And it sums them all up. So all species total value. So I don't know if that includes all other species, and it's just listing the main ones here. I guess I could figure that out. Yeah, it must. But if you look at, you know, the total value of fur harvested in Iowa in 1930 and 31 was $534,000. You kind of skim through, you get a bump here in the early 40s, then it tails back off, and then that late 70s, early 80s, the highest it ever got was in 79 and 80, right at $15.5 million generated from fur sales of Iowa fur. And you look at this doesn't have the number harvested, so the number harvested is on this next sheet that I've got, and I didn't print off the other page of it. But anyway, the one thing that I really got to thinking about and looking at this data and looking at some of these numbers is you start talking about even the 2018, you know, just raccoons, 115,000, or you go back to if you go back even to 2013, so we kind of had kind of a mini fur boom, right, in the late or in the early 2010s. So you look at just raccoons, 308,000 raccoons harvested. You stop and think about that. You know, you're talking Iowa, you're talking presumably a heavy. I've never been to Iowa, but you know, heavy in the Corn Belt. So you know, heavy agriculture. Raccoons are going to be a major impact. An extra 300,000 raccoons is going to be a major impact on those that agriculture harvest. You're talking about road kills and you know, problem animals and wildlife. You know, human wildlife issues. This is the kind of stuff that this data, in my opinion, is really important. This harvest data in supporting what we do as trappers, because when somebody's, if you could put some real numbers to this, and I don't know exactly how to do it, but 300,000 of one species, even across a whole state, is significant. You know, that's either a lot more road kills, a lot more, you know, farmers shooting them or hiring somebody, having to potentially hiring somebody to shoot them and kill them because they're raiding their crops or they're getting in people's chimneys and attics. And you know, the mantra that, you know, Mother Nature will correct itself. Well, that's true, but how long is that going to take? If there's a surplus of 300,000 animals, and not all those are going to live anyway, there's a percentage of those that are going to die naturally, whether it is road kills or whatever. And then, you know, it's not going to take long for that to correct, presumably. But if you got, you know, somewhere with a lot of agriculture that's kind of artificially inflating the what am I trying? The carrying capacity, and then you have such when I trapped in Iowa or Ohio, it was kind of interesting to think about because you've got these huge boom and bust periods just related with agriculture, right? I mean, you've got huge fields that are full of food for all kinds of wildlife to eat, right? And then just like that, you've got giant deserts, and there's only these small little patches of the residual, natural food sources. That's a huge swing, and that in itself could have, yearly impacts on, raccoon populations or wildlife populations in general. Of a boom and bust cycle of the food to a boom and bust cycle of how many animals make it through those winters, and so that's where I, personally I go back to having something that's sustainably harvested and made into something that is a long-term product that can be used and reused, and we're not doing any damage to the environment or the species by harvesting some that were going to be killed anyway, and we're actually getting a use and creating I was just thinking of like a fancy word that I was going to use, but anyway, creating I guess some awareness around the species and what we're doing. To me, that's a huge selling point, a huge plus. And so that's where I think, stopping and thinking, if there's 300, you're talking probably with all species, 500,000 animals that are harvested in Iowa, potentially in certain years. That's a significant impact, and that's us managing. And yeah, Mother Nature can manage it, but it's going to be uglier, and it's going to be cause more problems, and it's going to cost people. Whereas with the fur market, even if there's a marginal fur market, there's some people that are taking advantage of it, and they're not charging because of it. So that's where I think that it's important, at least to have some kind of. It's really important, and I appreciate these game agencies capturing this data, and they're not necessarily capturing it for the same reason that I'm talking about, but regardless, it's still getting captured, and it's something that we can use and utilize. So here's an interesting one. This is from Illinois, and this was the 2018-2019 season, and I really like their survey because one of the questions it asks is, what are your key motivations for trapping? Let's see. I don't see the exact questioning, but it hits at that. What are your key motivations for trapping? And it gives some options to answer. And so when asked to identify their motivations for trapping, controlling wildlife populations and recreational purposes / lifestyle were indicated as influencing factors by over 2/3 of the respondents. Financial incentive was the least influencing factor at just under 13%. To control wildlife populations, 32.7% was the most selected option for the number one reason for trapping in Illinois. And then there was another question that's, what is your number one reason for trapping? And the most important reasons among both groups were to remove nuisance animals and to control predator populations. So exactly what I'm talking about there. The control predator populations, I think, is something that is, especially with the expansion of the coyote, so to speak, that is something that has probably grown more in recent times. At least when you're looking back to 1931, right? But not something that's probably earth-shattering to any of us. That a financial incentive is a very minor part of the reason that we trap. But I think that's important data, because why do trappers get vilified a lot? Because we're trying to make money off of the skins of other animals. And that's very minimal as to why we do what we do, right? And this is data that backs that up. I guess it's potentially subjective, but it's still data there. So here we go. Pelt sold in Illinois in the 2018-2019 season. Total 68,275, which is less than I would have figured for Illinois. The heavy hitters, 10,500 muskrat, 39,000 raccoon, 5,000 beaver, 6,600 coyotes. And it lists the pelt sold in Illinois, the pelt sold outside Illinois. Total harvest of 68,000. So that's the pelt sold, okay? So here, this is the estimated statewide harvest by resident Illinois trappers. 2018, so 16,000 muskrat, 63,000 raccoons, 18,000 possums, 10,000 beavers, 12,000 coyotes. So that's something that's kind of interesting to note, is that, you know, there's 6,600 coyote pelts sold, but there was just shy of 12,000 coyotes harvested by Illinois trappers. So is that the remainder of those trappers? This is all by resident trappers. The estimated statewide harvest by resident trappers. Yeah, so you wouldn't have issues of, you know, the few people that may come in and state hop and catch, you know, coyotes and take them elsewhere and sell them. But you know what's happening to those other 6,000 coyotes? It'd be interesting to know. But so Illinois, the total harvest by trappers, 127, right at 128,000 for 2018. Goes up from the data. So this is back from 2007 to 2018. 2013 was a high point at 251,000 animals. So again, that's 10,000 beavers, 151,000 raccoons. This is stuff that's not costing people money that if trapping's taken away is going to cost private residents, private citizens money, because they're going to have problems with beavers, they're going to have problems with raccoons, they're going to have problems with these coyotes, and due to regulations, and not that there anything is imminent in Illinois, but there's always the possibility. So another interesting data point was the average season catch. So this has the estimated number of trappers, estimated total trapper harvest. So the average season catch, 13 muskrats, 3 mink, 2 otters, 23 raccoons, 11 possums, that's pretty light, 2 red fox, 2 gray fox, 7 beaver, 8 coyotes. So all that, you know, that's just average estimated based off of harvest numbers and number of trappers. But, you know, that shows you that the majority of folks out there are just run traps on the weekend. What we know, I guess, is all this shows you is what we know. That you've just got your recreational guys that are going out, you know, to try to get their kids involved, or they've got a renewed interest. They've got their 100 acres that they're, you know, trying to raise deer on or whatever. And, you know, they're getting out there and piddling. And truthfully, I think those are the best advocates for trapping. I wish I remember the name of the article, but I can't remember if it was Kyle or Kellen Kotz. They wrote an article here a while back, and it's been years ago, talking about the new trapper versus the longliner trapper, and how, you know, the longliner trapper is not the best advocate for trapping, I guess you could say, and not anything against longliner trappers, but you know, and I've never seen a longliner trapper, you know, so to speak, but you know, just the overall image, you know, for one, they're trying to rack up numbers, right, which is something that antis may key in on, but you know, they're going to have bloody trucks and I don't know, it was just an interesting. I need to ask Kyle or Kellen if I could repost that, because that was a pretty interesting. It was a pretty interesting perspective of just how, you know, just, I guess, a little bit of the different perspective of a lot of the longliners are kind of old time trappers that are, whatever I'm doing is none of your business. Well, that's not the day and age that we live in, when we are under so much scrutiny, regardless of whether we want to or not. All right, so just a couple more that I'll hit here. So I will say, Illinois was written very much like a research paper, and then that's I guess it depends on, and whoever's writing this stuff knows their audience, or knows who they think their audience is, but had an abstract, and then it has the methods that the survey was conducted, and for getting it out to the trappers, that's not very good, because nobody wants to read that mess. But an easy thing to do is just skim to the charts, because that's where the useful information to me is too. This is Michigan's 2017 and then 2018. 75,000 muskrats harvested in 2018, 38,000 raccoons, 12,000 possums, 10,755 coyotes, 431 bobcats, 20,000 beavers, and that's just trapping, and then you've got hunting, and then the number of trappers, and it's broken down by species, which is a little bit weird, but when you look through it, raccoon is a large percentage, and coyote is the next largest percentage so far as participants pursuing those animals, which is not terribly surprising. And then Pennsylvania, that'll be the last one. I hope this is interesting, y'all. It's really interesting to me. This is one that I thought, so this has got the number of hunters and trappers, and then this has got the fur harvest from 96 to 2017. And so I didn't total it here, but Pennsylvania, in Pennsylvania, I'm not sure. I should have made note. This looks like it was written in a because it's got coefficient data and stuff like that. So this looks like it was written in a research style. But I think Pennsylvania's got the Pennsylvania Game Commission has their own kind of outdoor journal, outdoor periodical that they put out. And I'm not sure how much trapping information is in that, but that's a pretty neat resource if they're still doing that. But let's see, overall, raccoon for the 2017 season, 90,000. Red fox, 65,000. Gray fox, 14,000. Coyote, 44,000. Muskrat, 24,000. So the one thing that was interesting to me is the looking from 96 to 2017. So the coyote harvest in 1996 was right at 8,000 coyotes. 2017, 44,440 coyotes. Now, I've always, and maybe it's just because I read a bunch of older magazines when I first got started, or I'm not sure why, but I always kind of have been hung up and had my mindset, my thinking that, everybody talks about when the coyotes move in, the red fox are gone, right? And so that was one thing that I jumped to on this. And in 1996, you had a harvest of 29,000, right at 30,000 red fox. In 2017, there was a harvest of 65,500 red fox. So, what's that? 4? That's more than 4. What is, a 6 times increase in coyote harvest, and just over double the increase in red fox harvest. And so it's, you kind of make some extrapolations, I guess, based on that that many more coyotes harvested. We know that the coyote price has been really high, so there could be more people out there trying to get after the coyote. So that's probably one reason why the coyote harvest is so high. And if there's more people targeting coyotes, then there may be more instance of people catching reds in coyote sets. So maybe the red fox number should have more than doubled. And maybe the fact that it didn't more than double is an indication of the red fox population. I don't know. I'm just looking at numbers and trying to think through arguments. But regardless, I think that it's interesting. Coyote harvest has 6x since 1996, and still the red fox harvest doubled since 1996. I take that as kind of a good sign, right? That even though there's obviously more coyotes on the landscape. There appears to be more red fox on the landscape too. So anyway, I hope that was just it was kind of interesting for me to go through and look and see again, just to think about the impact that trappers have on the landscape. I mean, let's see, just rough shooting this Pennsylvania harvest number 90. That's 100, and so that's over 200,000. So you're talking about easy. Let's see, 250, 60. Easy over 270,000 fur bear species harvested in 2017 in Pennsylvania. So that's a huge impact that trappers are having in wildlife populations, and we've got data to back it up. And you take trapping away from that, and I need to look at the Massachusetts data and see if there is Massachusetts data. Of course, I don't guess there will be harvest data once trapping got outlawed, but anyway, I guess I present all that to you because I think it's useful information, and I think it's also important to keep in mind that there is data like this available, and it's important as we as trappers participate in these surveys to try to get this information as accurate as possible, and then keep that in our back pocket of when we're getting attacked and people are wanting to shut down what we do. Hey, this is the impact that we're having. You take trappers, even though they aren't making any money out of it, they're still harvesting these animals. You take that opportunity away, and somebody's coming out of pocket to pay for these same animals to be harvested. So, obviously, all this is stuff that we know, but I think one thing that we've got to get better about is being able to put our, the reasons why. Other than, we talk about population management and all these things that, we as trappers do, but we don't really have many concrete things to point at, I feel like. Or we don't have things, at our fingertips to say, hey, you want to see what kind of impact we as trappers had in Georgia in beaver harvest last year? Boom, here it is. Nobody paid to have, presumably some of these animals caught. Maybe some did, maybe some didn't, but this is going to have a direct impact. Something that is producing income. Even though it's drastically dropped, something that produces $900,000 in revenue. I posted it. Where is it at? One thing that I didn't say, but it was on Michigan's site at the bottom of their abstract, so it was a kind of a research type paper, but it said hunters and trappers combined spend an average of $422 per year pursuing fur bears. Collectively, fur takers spent about $5,088,000 hunting and trapping fur bears in 2018 in Michigan. So the economic impact of hunters and trappers is definitely real, especially when we all spend a lot of money at trap and supply dealers. That's supporting locally owned small businesses. And, a lot of it when we're buying bait and lure and things like that is all stuff that's made right here and made in the USA here, made by other trappers. We're supporting our own industry. We're having impacts to the tune of, in the past, $8 million on one species in one state. And that doesn't even factor in what the tanneries and the garment manufacturers and all that. There's a huge trickle down effect from the industry because we are the first puzzle piece in a long line of where when we are traditionally producing fur and it goes into a fur market, where it goes. So it's something that I feel like we need to hold on to and as much as we can, and we've got to be prepared to fight for it. So anyway, I'll quit droning on. Hope y'all enjoyed that dive. If you got any questions or any feedback, holler at me. Let me know. Don't forget to go check out, pick you up a short liner trapping bag. Or I hope to have some of my wallets and beaver tail products on the site as well soon. I appreciate y'all listening, and I appreciate the support, and we'll catch you next time. Good luck this season.